interesting point of intersection between
putting our energy and our effort.
So, hello viewers. Today I'm in conversation with George Mumford. He's a legend, I would say. I mean, I have no words about this guy. He's a legend, I would say. I mean, he taught Mr. The legend of basketball, which is Jordan, right? Michael Jordan, who is actually, if somebody wants to become a basketball player, he must be knowing Michael Jordan, Jordan, who is known to be the god of, of basketball, right? And he taught him about leadership and mindfulness, performance. So, Mr. George Mumford, sir, welcome to the podcast, first of all.
Thank you, Bryant. I'm so excited to be here. And interesting, I haven't worked with cricket players yet, but I'd be happy to work with cricket players. But I work with all sorts of people. Basketball is what working with the elite like Michael and Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal and Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, you have worked with Bryant as well, right? Right.
Yeah, but I work with soccer players over in England, like Chelsea,
right,
football, stuff like that. So I work with all types of players. I'm known for working with MJ, but actually it's all types of players and all types, executives, musicians, everybody.
Right. So let me tell one thing to my viewers, that he's mindfulness and performance expert. He's an author of 2 best-selling books. The first one is The Mindful Athlete, and the second one is Unlocked. Right. So, sir, to begin with, I would like to know your journey as a coach. I mean, how did you get an opportunity to work with Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan? I just want to know your journey as a coach.
Yes. So I'm an OG, which means an old guy, not an old gangster, but I've been around for a while. As a matter of fact, I was just thinking about yesterday, I celebrated, let me see, I guess it was 1974. So what's that? That's like, it's like, 40 years ago yesterday, I got out of a 21-day detox. I was addicted to heroin and alcohol as a result of being a athlete, playing basketball specifically, and getting injured and getting addicted to pain meds and going on and on around that. And so 40 years ago, when I got out of recovery, I realized I had chronic pain, in the form of migraine headaches and back pain. I've been having issues with my back since I was a freshman in high school, or junior in high school. A junior in college. So going back to 1969, 1970. And so I had to learn how to manage my pain without pain med, because that's how I got started in the first place. So I got into this experimental program, which was called Managing Stress, and was taught by this woman. She was one of three at the time, what they call psychoneuroimmunologists. And that's a fancy way of saying they deal with the they deal with the mind-body process. Okay. And so she taught me how to use meditation and changing my lifestyle and taking personal responsibility for myself.
Right.
That's what I got into mindfulness and some of the other modalities, like the use of prayer meditation. But really, the idea that I was responsible and that I had autonomy in terms of how I used my mind, how I directed my focus. And so I got into it that way. And then at the time I was working as a financial analyst. So I worked in corporate. I was a functional substance abuser. And so I started learning. And at that time, I started reading over a book a day. And over the last 40 years, I've averaged at least 1 book a day. I'm one book a week for 40 years. And so I got into it. And as I started understanding that I needed to follow my heart, my bliss, I started tuning into my inner life and what my heart was telling me to do. And I ended up leaving my job and getting a job in the Center for Mindfulness. Back in those days, it was called the Stress Reduction and Relaxation Program. And it was at the UMass Medical Center in the Department Department of Preventive and Behavioral Medicine. At that time, we were just understanding about the mind-body process, and that's what I learned when I started dealing with that stress management, that eight-week or 10-week program. I forget how many weeks it was, but that's when I learned that the mind and body connected, and how I used my attention, how I related to my body and my mind. They were connected to how to help them communicate better. And so I got into that, and then I started teaching in prison, and I teaching in an inner city clinic, teaching on people on the other side of the tracks that wouldn't come to the medical center, but they actually go into their neighborhood and teach them about, now it's referred to as MBSR, with mindfulness-based stress reduction. But that's how I got my start. And then at that time, right around, it's interesting, it was right around, actually it was, yeah, I guess it was right around this time in August. The founder of the Center for Mindfulness, John Kabat-Zinn, he used to teach at this spiritual center called, what's the name of it? It was located in Rhinebeck, New York. Anyway, it was a spiritual center, and Phil Jackson used to run a program. It was almost like it's like they have these fantasy camps that they have where people go and they play basketball and as they imagine. So anyway, he had a program called Beyond Basketball, and him and John got to talking, and that was 1993, and the Bulls had just won their third consecutive NBA championship, and Phil was interested in having somebody come in and teach the players how to deal with the stress of success. And so I was identified as the person who could do that for a lot of reasons, but mainly because I had been engaged in the pro game, because my roommate in college was Dr. J, or Julius Erving, who was Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan. He was Hall of Fame basketball player. So I knew the game, and I, as a player, so I was selected to be the person to come in and help the guys work with the stress of success. But by the time I got there, Michael Jordan had retired because his dad had been murdered. So they were in full-blown crisis. And so that's how I got my start, working with these amazing players. And, I ended up working with Phil Jackson for over 30 years and been involved in like 8 NBA championships. And
It is an
as well.
incredible journey. Right.
Pardon me?
I mean, it is an incredible journey of yours, that how did you, associated with Michael Jordan, sir? Right? How did you work?
Yes. Well, so what happened was so after 18 months, I started working with them in October of 1993. In March of 1995, Michael Jordan came back to basketball. And then that's when I started my interaction with him. But I had been working with the team for 18 months. And that's when we began our relationship of teaching him how, how he was able to do things, but also teaching him about how to lead. Because in that 18 months, the team that he left and the team that he came back to were totally different teams. And the team that he left in, after the previous 18 months, they were battle tested. They had a fight to working with, before they had flagrant foul, flagrant fouls. Excuse me. Thank you. They had to deal with physical play and whatnot, and he didn't. He in his mind, the team wasn't up to snuff. They didn't know what it took to be able to be physically tough and to mentally go through things. And so I was able to help him meet the team where they were and help it's what they call in neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, what they call leading and pacing. You meet people where they are, and then you help lead them to where everybody wants to go. So that's how I got into it. I mean, so I know that's a little bit long, but we're talking about trying to squeeze in 40 years of experience in a couple of minutes.
Right. So, sir, I was researching about you on Wikipedia, and actually it was written there that you helped Kobe Bryant sir and Michael Jordan sir in leadership, that how to leadership mindset and all. So what are your insights about how to be a leader, and what are the important and essential habits and stuff which a leader should incorporate in his lifestyle to become a very amazing leader, right?
Yes. So to be a leader, you have to be yourself. So yourself, what I would call, I like to refer to it as self-mastery, or know yourself. So I like to talk about, you have to know yourself so you can be yourself, so you can express yourself, so you can share yourself. So the first part of it, and it's interesting because it coincides with emotional intelligence. If you understand EQ, there's really four aspects of it. The way they like to frame it. First aspect is self-awareness.
Okay.
Then the second thing is self-regulation. So we have this ability to step back and observe our life, examine our life, and see what we're doing, and being able to self-regulate, to change our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, to adapt to the way things are, and to make wise choices. We have this ability to create space between, when there's no space between stimulus and response, we're reacting and we're just, habitually relating to the experience, rather than as we use the process of what I call in my book, The Mindful Athlete, the superpowers of mindfulness, concentration, um, um, right effort, um, trust, and insight. You need to create space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you have the freedom and power to choose. So we can regulate or relate to our experience in ways where we can actually slow things down and make wise choices. Okay, I'm just doing it. So the self-awareness, self-regulation. Then the third thing is social awareness, because we live in a network of relationships, and then we live in communities or in teams. And so the second thing is the social awareness, being able to sense. Now we might talk about empathy and compassion and loving kindness, and this idea of how do we get beyond this illusion of separateness, so we know that I and the other one, we're all connected, right? And then the fourth thing is relationship. They call it relationship management, but I don't like the word management. I prefer to use relationship development or community development. How do we do this thing as a whole when we know that the whole is greater than the sum of the individual parts. So you can have a bunch of individuals, but
Right.
that's not the same as having a group of individuals that are in alignment with values and vision. Does that make sense? And so to be a leader, you have to have that emotional intelligence. You have to know yourself, but you have to know socially where the team is and be able to read and lead. But you have to have a vision of possibility. Where are we going? Or hey, here's what I think we can do. And so working with Phil Jackson's teams, we used to talk about this idea of one mind, one breath, and
Right.
this idea of the strength of the wolf is in the pack, and the strength of the pack is in the wolf. So you have to do both. And you're only as strong as your individual wolf, if you will, if you say it that way. Does that make sense? And so learning about leadership, and then you discover that the best way to lead people is to model, trust, and inspire them. A friend of mine wrote a book called Trust and Inspire. His name is Stephen
Right.
M. Covey. That's what we have to do. You have to share power, and you have to share, and this is so maybe I'll talk about it because you talk about basketball. So let's talk about what Phil Jackson had to do. He was an
Right.
assistant coach for the Chicago Bulls before he became the head coach. And the first thing he had to do when he became the head coach
Right.
is convince Michael to do less and let his other teammates do more. So he had to share power with them. But at the same time, we had to build the community. We had to help his teammates get to some level of self-mastery, so self-awareness and self-regulation, so that they could actually make wise choices. And so you have to do both. You have to build up the individual, but at the same time, you have to build up the community. And
Right.
so being able to share, and so as a leader, you have to have a vision, but you have to be willing to share power, share responsibility with people beyond yourself. And so the best way to have power is to share power. That makes sense. The best way, so you want to free people up and let people develop the skills and knowledge so that it frees you up to be focused on the vision, and making
Right.
sure you're leading people, and you're able to support them to have some skin in the game. So everybody has to have skin in the game. We need everybody. Does that make sense? So that's basically the leadership. But to lead
Right.
and here's the interesting thing, and I'll share some books with you. There's one book called Becoming a Leader by Warren Bennis. And in
Mm.
that book, he says you have to be a leader to be yourself. But he says two important things. He says self-knowledge
Mm.
and self-invention are lifelong processes. So
Right.
what does that mean? That means that you have to know yourself, but we're becoming,
Right.
and you're going to have So as things change, because everything's changing, you have to change, but you have to have your core values. If your values are aligned with principles, then you're probably going to be okay. But you have to keep evolving and changing and relate to people and meet people where they are. Even if you have the same team, when you come back the next year, everybody's changed, things have changed. So you have to change You have to be able to relate to change as it's going, but having values, being grounded in how things are, being grounded in divine principles or values that are principles. Because why is that important? Because principles, number one, are universal, they're timeless, and they're self-evident. So we have to be able to observe and see when we have a principle of mutual benefit, mutual respect. Then we have to know, if are we doing that? When we get out of alignment, how do we get back in alignment? And understand that's really crucial. Understand that we have core values and that those are guiding ideas. Does this make sense? I'm giving you a lot, but leadership is about meeting people where they are, but really understanding, where you're going, what are your core values and what's your worthy cause. And there's a book called Tribal Leadership, and it talks about that. The goal, you have to have core values and a worthy cause or worthy ideal that
Right.
everybody is on the same page. So there's a book called Good to Great. And in that book, they use the metaphor of you got to get everybody on the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. And then once you get on the bus, you decide where you want to go. Well, I think that's simplistic, but it's really more complicated because as a leader, you are actually creating a vision of possibility so that people say, oh, yes, let's do that. And here's how we're going to do it. Does that make sense?
Right. And sir, it is very practical stuff you have shared in very simple ways. That what are the important things which a leader should incorporate in his leadership style, right? And sir,
Yeah. So the important things is the main thing is authenticity. To be yourself. To be a leader, you have to be yourself. So believe it or not, the first leadership decision we make in life is the decision to be ourselves. Because people are telling you who they think you should be or who they think you ought to be. But at the end of the day, you are responsible. You get to decide who you are. And that's what I had to try to go inside and be real with me and how I'm feeling and saying, okay, this is what I really want. I was a financial analyst, but I really wanted to work with people. I really wanted to share what I got with other people because I wanted other people to unlock their masterpiece. I wanted other people to realize they have a masterpiece within and that only they can unlock that. It's an inside job, but I could show you how to do it. So when you talk about what's the important thing in leadership is to be yourself and understand that you have to know yourself. So the self-knowledge and the self-invention, you have to keep reinventing yourself and keep seeing yourself in new and different ways so you can do new and different. You make sense, but having a vision, but having the integrity is really important and being authentic. Being authentic, that means being real and then being able to communicate and be able to embrace whatever comes up, say yes to it, and then to generate hope, generate a way of relating to it in a way where we're able to do some things. Does it make sense?
Right. It is very practical advices that be yourself, be authentic. And sir, I'd like to know about your book, which is Unlocked, right? So what are the chapters which you have included and what are the topics you have covered in that specific book? So please tell us something about that.
Yeah, so there's so many of them. I mean, I'll have to name them all, but let me tell you, the title of the book is very descriptive. So the title is Unlocked.
Right.
So a colon, embrace your greatness.
Right, embrace your greatness.
Find the flow, discover success. So the chapters have to do with knowing who you are, embrace your greatness, understanding that the basic principle is foundation is, so you're in India. So I would say, I would talk about the fact that we all have Buddha nature. Okay, Christ consciousness, Kuan Yin energy, whatever it is. But I call it the masterpiece within. And we all have that. And it's encrusted in an isolating shell. And our job is to unlock it, to break out of that shell. And believe it or not, the best way to break out of that shell is like me, when you get confronted with adversity, when you get confronted with unavoidable suffering, that's when you're able to find the will to just let your latent abilities express themselves. And so that's a basic principle is we have this Buddha nature. We have a masterpiece within. We're not broke. We're not fixed. We just have to figure out how to release that divine spark, how to access that Buddha nature, that Christ consciousness, whatever you want to name it, but it's the energy. And once we connect with that, all things are possible. Does that make sense? I want to explain it as simply as I can. So that's the same thing. So once you know, so it's really as simple as embrace your greatness means embrace it, own it, but take for it. So it's not like, oh, you have it and you don't have to do anything. No, you have it, but you have to use it. You have to embrace it. And why is it important to embrace it? Because it's challenging to embrace it, because it's uncomfortable. It gets us way out of our comfort zone. And people don't understand that we have greatness. Like I say, to embrace your greatness, one side of the coin, and I'll use an American quarter. I mean, we have a quarter. One side of the coin is heads. That's the divine spark, the masterpiece within. The other side of that coin is uncertainty, anxiety. They come together. So if it was easy to embrace it, everybody would do it. But it's challenging to do it because we're uncomfortable, and the anxiety is there. When we have anxiety, we think we're anxious because we bit off more than we can chew or whatever, instead of realizing, no, the anxiety comes with it. And we have this, he's from Sweden, I believe, Soren Kierkegaard, back in 1846. He talked about this, and he called it the alarming possibility of being able. So we think that they, life is great and it's easy. No, they have to deal with anxiety, uncertainty from moment to moment. We don't know what's going to happen. The future is unknown, but we have to say yes to it anyway and figure out how to relate to it in a way that allows us to address our better angels or to express our masterpiece within. Does that make sense? And so that we don't talk about that enough. So in my Mindful Athlete, I talk about this idea in both books, but in the Mindful Athlete, I first introduced it, that you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing and learning. If you're not dealing with anxiety, and elite athletes, they're dealing with it, but they're embracing it, and they perceive it as, oh, I'm close to my goal, or it's excitement. And how I relate to that anxiety, what I call it, has everything to do with how I'm able to move through it. That is actually telling me that I'm out of my comfort zone, that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. This is just comes with it. When I embrace it, say, okay, then when I embrace it, now I can use it. And when I embrace it, what will happen is I start to find my own flow. Life has it's like there's a flow, there's a rhythm. Joseph Campbell talked about it. And Power of Myth. He said, when you follow your bliss, doors open where there were no doors. So I would say how I ended up working with MJ and Kobe and all of these amazing people being on this podcast was because I was following my bliss. And the universe was colluding with me when I was saying, this is who I am, this is what I want to be, this is how I want to serve. I want to help people unlock. And the universe said, okay, I'll help you do that. And then doors open, and you don't know how it's going to manifest. But my job is to embrace my greatness, find the flow, find the rhythm, find my rhythm, find my pattern that resonates with who I'm supposed to be, because we're unique. There's no one like us. There's never going to be anyone like us. So we have certain qualities we can gift to the world. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
And so I don't know what happened here. So that's what we have to do. And so when you embrace your greatness, you'll find your flow, you'll find your rhythm, you'll find, because all of us are programmed to have a certain rhythm, a certain way of being, a certain talent, certain gifts, and we have to own those. So you embrace your greatness, then you'll find the flow, how to express it, how to share it with the world, and then you'll discover success.
Right.
And the success, let me be clear about that. Success, I'm going to use, there's a gentleman, he wrote a book called The Strangest Secret. You know what the strangest secret is? We become what we think about. So his definition of success is a progressive realization of a worthy ideal or goal. So I want to go to the mountain. So I don't have to wait till I get to the mountain to be successful. Each step I move in direction of that mountain is success.
Right.
Today I was successful. I'm moving in the right direction. I get off track. I come back. That's success. Progressive realization of where the idea deal. So some people have success, but they don't have fulfillment. But what I'm talking about, being successful, being able to express yourself honestly for the greatest good, for the highest good. And so to me, it's about service. And so for me, it's really simple. What I learned was, if I want to learn something, I teach it. And if I want to keep something, I have to give it away.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying? So these are spiritual principles. These are, I'm aligning myself with divinity, with how the universe works, how things work.
Right.
And so whatever I am offering to the world, that's what I'm going to get back.
Right.
So you meet what you mirror. So if I don't like what I'm seeing, then I got to go inside and change it.
Right.
So that's where the self-regulation comes in. You get the self-mastery. Then that self-mastery goes from social awareness. How can I relate to others so that they can unlock? And how can I develop these relationships or build these communities where it's safe for us to be who we are. That
Right.
we're inspired, we're encouraged, we're motivated, we're trusted, inspired to be who we're supposed to be, and to share with everybody else what we have to offer to the world.
Right. And George sir, you have shared a very amazing thing that we have to embrace the problem, and actually we have to face problem. We don't have to fear from the problem, because uncomfortable situation always teaches us something, right? So
Yes.
sir, I would like to move towards the next question, because we are approaching the end of podcast, right? So what are your advices for aspiring leaders who want to become leaders in their life? Top three advices you would like to convey, to them, that these are the must three
Yes.
advices.
Yes. So it's really simple. And I came to this. I was on two podcasts.
Right.
I think it was Tim Ferriss and the School of Greatness with Lewis Howes. And they asked me what three things, similar to what you're saying, what three things you know for sure or whatever. They did ask it in a different way. But the three things that I noticed I kept answering was, number one, the only time we have is now. So now is the time. So you have to, if you want love, you have to be love. If you want peace, you have to be peace now. The only one you can be is yourself.
Right.
So you have to be yourself, and you know that you have to be authentic. Your heart will tell you, you got to be still and know. And listen, we have a wisdom within us that if we can get in that eye of the hurricane, there's a wisdom and a creativity that comes out of that. That's authentic. In other words, we're letting the spirit move through us, whether it's our
Right.
Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, love, whatever you want to call it. So the only time we have is now. You have to be yourself. And the third thing is all you need is love. So when we talk about love, we're talking about open mind, open heart. We're now I'm going back to my Christian upbringing where Jesus talked about love everything, love your enemies. Buddha talked about the same thing, loving kindness, compassion, empathy, that wisdom, how, to get beyond this illusion of separateness, and that, things are always changing and we suffer. Life is difficult, period. That's it. That's the first noble truth. It's difficult, but it's not the difficulty that's the issue. The issue is, are we going to relate to the difficulty in a way where we become freer and we become more ourselves, rather than relating to the difficulty of pushing it away and then being a pseudo self or not being real, but know the truth, and truth shall make you free. So once you embrace it, you can
Right.
get it. So that's the thing. So as a leader, we have to figure out how to be who we are in the moment,
Right.
and how to embrace love, because when you love something, you make it grow.
Right. So sir,
So I was probably simpler than you expected. So here's the exciting thing about that.
right.
Because I train it that way, you could do it in a multiplicity of ways.
Right.
But you have to figure it out. You have to figure out, embrace your greatness, and figure out how you
Right.
need to do it, how Rodney needs to do it, how you do it, how George needs to do it. And that's the exciting thing. And people get disillusioned or maybe even upset with me because they want a formula. And the formula is, there is no formula.
Right.
But to the degree there's a formula, you have to embrace whatever comes up, say yes to it,
Right.
and then generate the hope and then make decisions. So I'll leave you with the takeaway, which I call the 4 A's.
Wow.
So the first A is awareness. It's mirror mind. You got to say yes to whatever's there. And the second A is acceptance. Now that's challenging because it's hard to accept things when we think we're a certain way and we find out we're not, or we think that a person's a certain way and they're not. We have to say and embrace it, say yes to it. Why is that challenging? Because it's uncomfortable, but it also means that we have to let go to grow. So we have to go through the grieving process of denial, bargaining, anger, depression, acceptance. And that's not a linear process. You can spend a lot of time in that, or you can learn how to let go right away because you know that it's the best thing to do. You can see it. The wise thing is to let it go. So the awareness, the acceptance. Third thing is compassionate action. What's the action? What's the action that's gonna bring, that's gonna relate to my better angels or be for the highest good, right? So the compassion. And the fourth is assessment. We have to, unexamined life is not worth living. So we have to examine what works, what didn't work. And it's not about judging good or bad. It's about helpful, not helpful, wholesome, not wholesome.
Right.
That's it. And then you just align with what works, what's wholesome versus what's not wholesome. And don't get into the judging of it. Just realize, no, you need to change behavior so that you can be in alignment with how things are, but always be in alignment with who you are and
Who
who
you
you
are.
are being, how you can connect and get beyond this illusion of separateness. So I and the other are one. So you feel more like you're creating a safety for people to be who they are.
Right. And George sir, I'd like to say you have explained 4 A's, which is very incredible thing. I mean, I have never heard this, and actually I have never read it in any book. So it is very, and it is a wonderful opportunity to have you on the show, because these are some of those things which can be learned by legends, right? So Mumford sir, I'd like to know what is the difference between growth mindset and fixed mindset? That how do you think that mindset plays a massive role to become a strong person in, and actually to be in difficult situation, and how to manage growth mindset even in challenging situation? What are your insights?
Yeah. So I don't know if you ever heard that. I talk about it in my books.
Oh,
There's this story of this Cherokee, is a indigenous tribe called Cherokees, and the grandfather is talking to his grandson, and he said, there is this ferocious battle going on inside of me, and it's going
right.
on inside of you and everybody else, between two wolves. And he says one wolf, will just simplify and call it fear, all the negative emotions, and one wolf is love. And the grandson becomes really concerned, and he says, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" And he says, "The one I feed." And so when fear comes, fear uh, is the fight, flight, and freeze, being in survival mode, or fixed mindset. And when you're in a fixed mindset, you look at things and you're in the reptilian brain, and 9 out of 10 thoughts are negative. So you're looking for danger. So you're not looking for a solution, you're looking for danger. And when you're in a growth mindset, which is love, your open mind, open heart, and your cognitive function is enhanced because you're coming from positivity, and you see things. You see the melody of the song. So you might forget the words, but the melody will help you begin the words. So it's seeing the big picture. It's where you have access to creativity and wisdom versus being in the fight. You're on your heels. You're just looking at survival, and your body is primed to run or flee. Now, part of that fight or flight, if you can use the fight to actually move forward and to work through things, that could be helpful. But the main thing we have to understand is a growth mindset says that whatever happens, the question you ask is, what's the lesson? Versus, go ahead. I didn't hear you. I couldn't hear you. Did you mute yourself? Okay, it sounds like something happened. I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Now you can hear me, sir?
Yes. And it's really a mindset that says that
Right.
that I can learn whatever I need to learn, and that I have to embrace whatever comes up. And then the question is, what's the lesson? Now, I was listening to M. Scott Peck thing, and he talked about how you see things. And the thing is, you see it as a challenge. You see things as an elite performer, as a great leader. You see a stepping stone as a roadblock. Not as you see a roadblock as a stepping stone. So you say, what's the lesson? You ask how-to questions, and it totally changes, and because you know that you can learn whatever you need to learn. And the idea is to embrace it and to bring curiosity. Say, oh, what is this? Oh, this is going to be great. You make a mistake. Oh, this is an opportunity for me to learn something, so that I learn from it. So these mistakes actually help me to evolve and help me to understand what I need to understand. It's totally different. It's so simple, but it's also reflective of your nervous system. When you're in a fight, flight, and freeze, your brain gets locked up, so you don't have access to your memory. So even stuff you don't have access to it. It's like having your computer not having enough RAM, so you can't check your email.
Right.
So if you're stressed out, then you're going to be 40% dumber. You're not going to have access to all of your resources. It's just really that simple. And it's a reptilian brain. You have the reptilian brain that's 5 million years old. Then you have the emotional brain, and that's when you get emotionally hijacked. Something happens, and then you come out of fear, and there's no stress, no space between stimulus and response. But if you are able to be at ease, then the stimulus goes to your prefrontal cortex, where you have executive functioning. and you can say, okay, what do I want to do? That's when you create space. So the thoughts you have, how you see things, are either going to take space away or give you more space. And you want more space. And in that space, now it slows things down. So you can ask yourself, what's my intention? What's the best choice here? It's this is the autonomic and nervous system, the sympathetic, fight, flight, or freeze, the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. So that's it.
It is very practical thing, sir, that how to manage growth mindset even in challenging situation. You have said very practical advices. And sir, I would like to know.
Yeah, so you just notice, oh, I'm in survival mode. It's not that you're bad. So then the question is, how do you get out of it? You get out of it by letting go. So, oh, I'm in survival mode. What's going on here? What do I want? But just pausing and just noticing you're in it and just breathe. And once you know it, the mindfulness, knowing you're in survival mode, the mindfulness, you start to say, how do I get out of it? By focusing on what you want, by resetting and changing it, seeing it as an opportunity, not as a curse. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Totally makes sense. And it is actually very practical that we should be honest to ourselves, and we should know the specific intention that why I'm doing this and all. So it is very practical thing you have shared more further. So I'd like to know. I was watching your podcast on YouTube, and you were discussing the 5 superpower powers in order to achieve a goal. So I'd like to know what are those 5 superpowers and why these are crucial in order to achieve.
So if you look at the Buddhist teachings, there will be the 5 powers or the 5 spiritual faculties. And I'm going to have to go, but the first one is mindfulness. So mindfulness is just look at a wheel. The mindfulness is the hub. And then the spokes are wisdom or insight. And wisdom can be information, rational thought, intuition, direct experience. So if you have a lot of insight or wisdom and not enough faith, you become cynical. So the idea is they have to be balanced. Mindfulness helps you develop them, but balance wisdom or know the information with the faith. You understand? This is how things are. It's a lawful universe. We have Buddha nature. We can take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, whatever. Okay, now you have effort. Or right effort is a continuous application of balanced energy. So right effort is to get your mind at positive. And so the hindrances like doubt or worry and restlessness, first thing you have to do is notice that it's there and how to abandon it. So when you have effort. If you have too much effort and not enough concentration or poise, you become frenetic. But if you have too much poise and not enough effort, you become sluggish. So it's always about balancing those 5 superpowers. So I just gave you 2. So mindfulness is the hub. Mindfulness helps you balance them, but it also helps you cultivate each one. And when you're mindful, I have to get on the call. When you're mindful, all 5 of those superpowers are operating. So anytime you do one of those, the other 5 are there.
Right.
Help you. Make sense? So I have to go because I got a group that I got to go on. But I hope this is helpful. But you ask great questions.
Right. And actually, thank you so much, sir, for being on the show.
You're welcome. Have a good one.